Welcome to my channel. Today, as part of the normal status quo, we're going to continue hating on every single thing that Disney puts out, even if some of the stuff they put out doesn't apply to me, because frankly, I'm entitled to every single piece of media being catered exactly towards me. Today, we're going to be talking about the Forces of Destiny, which is SJW bullshit that was forced down our throats, that's being played for our children on Disney Channel, and despite what people might think, is like totally a big deal. So, I have such low expectations because Disney ruins everything. Nothing's good. In fact, I didn't like the prequels either, and that was George Lucas. The only thing that's good is A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. Return of the Jedi was dumb too because it had all those stupid teddy bears running around, and you're telling me they could have beaten stormtroopers? What? Anyway, let's get watching this Force of Destiny thing. I'm gonna, as always, be super critical and leave a super intelligent review at the end.
2 hours later.
So I watched it, and my humble opinion is that it wasn't sexy enough. What's the point of having all these chicks on screen if you don't get any side boob? So today, as the title of my video suggests, we're going to be talking about the Forces of Destiny, which is a mini-series comprised of about 18 shorts per season. It runs for 2 seasons, and each episode is fairly female-driven, usually, and focused, because it was admittedly a way for Disney to kind of push this Forces of Destiny line that they already created of dolls. And there's a huge multitude of different dolls that you can get. And like I said, it's kind of, and like I hinted at in my opening sequence, it's very much geared towards younger children. Just as the Ewoks cartoon was in the 80s, but with a little bit more substance packed into these 2 to 3 minute shorts.
My new ankle bracelet!
Now, the cool thing about Forces of Destiny is that it does take place across the saga, and it is technically canon compliant. And while I had seen several of the shorts, I hadn't ever seen the series in total. And I wanted to do that because I remember when it came out, it was such a big deal. And not on the positive side of the spectrum like The Mandalorian is, but a lot of fans had their undies in a twist because of this series. And I'm not at all insinuating that, that how I did my opening sequence, that's how you guys are all but sometimes it's how you sound in the comment section when you're complaining about something that is, 1, very inconsequential, and 2, that's clearly driven towards an audience that's not you.
It's not about you!
And I wanted to kind of see what was getting people so upset, and also what about it would be good towards kids. And if I can take away from this thinking to myself, would I have enjoyed this at 7 years old? Then it's a win. If I happen to enjoy part of it, then even better. So right off the bat, we start out with a little short that continues throughout the series a little bit. One thing that's interesting is that there is a continuity of its own in the Forces of Destiny. We start out with Rey and BB-8 on Jakku, and then we kind of revisit that a couple times, and there's references to other segments throughout, which I thought was really cool, and it was something I wasn't really expecting. Talking first about the animation style, I actually like the way these characters are designed. I think that it was an interesting way to go, considering all Star Wars animation is a very specific looking 3D factor. Even Resistance is 3D as well, even though it holds a little bit more of a video game DLC vibe to it, which I actually didn't mind when it was first released. Clone Wars and Rebels have a more rounded or wooden looking kind of thing that was actually honed specifically at Lucasfilm, their animation software. And Lucasfilm on its own is actually super successful in helping develop technology and these ways that we can make different pieces of media even better. Well, anyway, I thought it was interesting they went with the 2D models with this, particularly because we get dolls, like I mentioned earlier. It was something I would have really enjoyed as a little kid, seeing all these different characters all over the place. And one thing I immediately noticed with the animation style that I thought was a little funny was that, the characters move on the foreground, but there is definitely a more stillness on the background. And I'm not saying that like it's a bad thing. It's just an interesting choice. Reminds me a little bit of the Powerpuff Girls and how that's designed. And I mean, maybe that's a negative thing for you guys, but I always liked the Powerpuff Girls growing up. And I really noticed that whenever they were moving on like a ship, like when Rey is moving on her speeder through the desert sands of Jakku, or when even Ahsoka, when she's running through Coruscant on the upper levels, and she's moving, but like the things around her really aren't. And when they pan over Coruscant, I immediately got Powerpuff Girls vibes, which take that how you will. But the characters are very expressive. I think they look like their characters. I think they gave a lot of distinct features to them to make them look different. It also looked like it was something that was easy to translate into a doll. There's big eyes, larger features. It was I think a good move for something that was essentially selling a toy line a little bit. Which, by the way, if you try to discount this series for the fact that it was selling a toy line, please remember that the original intention of Clone Wars 2002 was for that very purpose. And that is heralded as a great piece of media. So, you know, just food for thought. And like the interactions here are pretty cute. Rey and BB-8 are very much Rey and BB-8. It's Daisy Ridley who voices her, which I thought was really cool. And like a lot of these actors return to form. Daisy Ridley returns as Rey. John Boyega pops in as Finn. We see, of course, the animated voice actresses show up as well. Matt Lanter, Ashley Eckstein, Vanessa Marshall. We see a lot of them kind of come back to their own form, and it's really cool to see that as well. I thought it was a little weird that Felicity Jones does voice Jyn Erso, and then she just doesn't. I guess it was a contractual obligation type thing, which doesn't really surprise me considering Felicity Jones is definitely more of like a big indie actress that was a little bit, I think, tied into it because of her association of Rogue One. Don't expect to see her at any conventions after the ones that she was kind of obligated to do. And in concurrence with that, I thought that some of the really cool things about these episodes was that a lot of them explain things, little things that you necessarily didn't really think of when you're watching the movies, but it's a nice touch. For example, there's an episode where Ahsoka trains with Anakin, and she's fighting with her two lightsabers, and it's explained that this is her learning how to use her two lightsabers, which is really cool because in the Clone Wars, she just kind of shows up with two lightsabers. She first has one, and then she's just suddenly using two. And I thought that was really neat that they threw that in there, and they were just like, and then Yoda has a nice little training sequence. The Yoda in this very much looks like Clone Wars 2002 Yoda, which was cute. He has a little scrunched up face. He's right here. I really liked the way that they captured the relationships between the characters in these short little moments. There's more dialogue here than you'd probably expect in 2 to 3 minutes. You get to see characters that you never really thought were going to meet before. Like Hera and Han have this adorable conversation that you just didn't really ask for, but you were glad that you had. Not only was this confirmation at the time that Hera survived, Star Wars Rebels before this all happened, but like it was really cool to see the two of them interact with each other, and they continue to interact, and different characters. I mean, Leia met Hera and all of them on Rebels, but seeing Han Solo and Hera kind of be like, my ship's better than yours, was really cool to see.
No one believes the Ghost is a superior ship to the Falcon.
Right, well, you don't have to tell me.
And I liked that. And there's a couple moments like that with different characters too. There's a lot of bonding between like Padme and Ahsoka, which is really neat, including like the trifecta of Padme, Ahsoka, and Anakin. And just those little nods, those little hints, like, does Ahsoka know that Anakin and Padme are a thing? Does she not? Is she a clueless potato? The Ahsoka novel says yes, but there is kind of like lean into those hints, And like even just like really cute stuff. Like, we don't see Leia go in the movies to the Ewok village, but we see it in this little show. And the Ewoks they present her with her pretty dress and everything, and she gets a spear with it, and it's just small stuff like that. I did notice a continuity error. Maybe it's not one, but I did notice it. There's an episode where Sabine meets Leia, and they, engage in this subterfuge against the Empire where they're getting plans, and Leia's actually in her traditional A New Hope gear, which is cool to see. She's got the buns. And one thing that was really interesting was that Sabine and her have this conversation about, they're tricking the Empire. Sabine is acting as a bounty hunter that's kidnapping her. And then another bounty hunter shows up, which is awesome. And it was such a weird plot twist. He looks kind of strange in this animation style, but I was okay with it. I was cool to see it. I thought it was weird though, because Sabine is like, hi, I'm Sabine Wren, and I'm supposed to be kidnapping you. And it's interesting because doesn't this happen after Star Wars Rebels? Like, it kind of has to, judging by how Leia looks. I mean, unless she wears that outfit more than once, but I just can't believe that a princess would do that. But it's weird because they're supposed to have met before. So maybe they didn't. I don't know. But it's a little odd to me. There are segments that I felt really didn't need to be in there. There are some, like the season finale is really kind of, like the first season finale anyway, is really kind of just not all that important. Like, it's just Sabine being upset because Ketsu breaks her bike, and that's pretty much it. But then being like, it's okay, you can just help me fix it. And I think those are the moments where it kind of really shines through as being geared towards kids. But I really thought they were doing good stuff with the other things, with the when they focused on the character relationships, particularly those that we don't typically see interact as much. I think that was where the strength really honed in. Couple don't make sense as well. Like there's one where Leia squares off against a Wampa, and it doesn't make sense why he's on the base, and then they lock him up, and then what happens? Like, why did we not see him later? It raises a lot of questions. Nothing that's like too important. Like I said, the show is very inconsequential. It's just at its best when it really focuses on the characters and kind of just dials back on the action, whereas Clone Wars 2002, not to keep comparing it to that, really succeeded in its action. I think that Forces of Destiny does it best when it's just really focusing on the relationships and the characters, because I think it's what we're here for in Star Wars, and it does not come off as childish as you think it is. I had true enjoyment over a lot of these segments. Some I was bored, like there's one where Rey literally just has to clean snot out of a pig, and that's it. And I thought that one was kind of dumb. But then there's one where Ahsoka trains Ezra, and there's this like really powerful scene amongst it. And it's really neat when you put it juxtapositioned against the scene with her and Yoda training, and how that shows and how much she's grown. And I think that's again where the show really lines up. It's only 2 to 3 minutes long per episode, and they really do manage to squish a lot in. And again, the animation style is pretty cool. I think that it does its best at that kind of thing. I didn't get the super like intense girl vibes. I mean, I know that there's episodes with a lot of like purple in the sky or something like that, and there's like pretty sunsets and everything, and there are a lot of female characters in it, but I never once felt like this is girl power, like how some shows kind of shove that down your throat, and it's not quite the representation you want because it's just being like, hey, look what we're doing. And you don't ever really want that. You want it to be natural, and I felt a lot of it was natural, and I think it's because the characters that they're grounded in, your Princess Leia, your Jyn Erso, your Ahsoka Tano, your Padme Amidala, these characters are very rich, and they've been expanded over different mediums. So to say that this show is watered down social justice warrior BS is kind of derivative, in the sense that it kind of takes away from the fact that these characters have been developed elsewhere, and this is just showing little moments of them. And there are other characters there. Ezra makes an appearance, Han makes an appearance, Anakin makes an appearance. There's other characters there. It's just kind of, you know, a nice little highlight on the strengths and weaknesses of these supporting characters, and I liked to see it. I enjoyed this. I think there, like I said, there's parts of it, I'd say about half the show I would have just enjoyed as a kid and I didn't now, but then the other half of it I genuinely had legit enjoyment of as an adult, so I take that as a win. What do you guys think of Forces of Destiny? Have you ever seen it? I would definitely give it a try. Maybe not the whole series, but there are definitely some clips that I could definitely recommend for you. Before you go, make sure you vote in my round 2 of March-April Madness. Again, I'm going to do a video on the character that wins the bracket challenge. So, may the Force be with you. Have a great day.